From the extract of King Lear, we can find out several things about the relationship between King Lear and his daughters, and also there are several literary devices that we can take a look at. There are many parts of this extract where King Lear is perversely asking for his daughters to tell them how much they love him, and he asks us to, what of you shall say doth love us most? Which of you shall we say doth love us most? And he's saying this because he wants to know who loves him the most, so that he can give them the biggest part of his kingdom. It's a very weird way of doing it, because he's giving away his kingdom while retaining kingship. So he's giving away all the work and trouble and keeping all the royalties of being a king and the crown, and he intends to give the land to his daughters and then spend his rest of his days visiting them. So it's a kind of foolish thing, because you can't just give your kingdom to your daughters and then still expect to be in charge, because as soon as they get it, then they can do whatever they want. And he's trusting them to look after him, but they show no signs of wanting to do so. And from the way that they answer his question, that is Goneril and Regan, it's very obvious that they have rehearsed the way that they're going to ask for it, so they must have known about what they had to do in order to get the most land. So they say things such as, I love you more than words can wield the matter, dearer than eyesight, space and liberty, beyond what can be valued rich or rare. And that is such an emphasizing their love, but it's just an embellished lie almost, because they're just coming up with this trying to value love when love isn't something that can be valued. They're just as bad as their father, because their father believes that love can be valued, and whoever gives him the biggest value will get the biggest size of land. So he's like he's choosing to believe words instead of actions. Like when he says that Cordelia was sweet and young, and the other two weren't so nice, but the other two say such nice things about him, and Cordelia doesn't. So he's ignoring the actions of the past. He's just relying on this one moment which they speak a rehearsed paragraph about how much they love him, and then assessing the worth to rule a kingdom on that, which is very foolish, and it's kind of ridiculous. So from that point we can see that King Lear himself, as a parent, isn't a very good one. And then we move on to Goneril, the first daughter to speak, and she says the part about loving her father more than eyesight and liberty, which is an unnatural kind of love. It's beyond how a daughter should love her father, and it goes to show that Goneril doesn't love her father truly. It's like cupboard love. She loves him, or says she does, just so she can get a portion of his land, and there is no real true sentiment about, in her words, they're meaningless words that she's flinging about. And then Lear, in the next bit, believes her, because he says, with shadowy forests and plenteous rivers, wide-skirted meads, when he's describing what he's going to give her. And it's almost as if he's enjoying this. He's showing off to his whole court how much his daughters love him, and then showing off what he's giving away and what they're worth. And because he's saying, instead of saying it has forests and champaigns and rivers and meads, he says shadowy forests rich champaigns, plenteous rivers, wide-skirted meads, which is really going one step too far on how great the piece of land he's giving them is. So he's taking pleasure out of listening to the words, and then he's giving them for making him happy. And when we move on to Regan, the second daughter to speak, she immediately starts to become competitive. She says, "I am made of the same self-same metal that my sister is." And this is like saying, I'm exactly the same here, only I'm better, because I have this and that. And she says, only she comes too short, that I profess myself an enemy to all other joys which the most precious square of sense possesses, and find I am alone felicitate in your dear highness's love. This is unbelievable, and it's such an unbelievable lie, because she's saying without her father she's not happy at all in anything she does, but when she's alone with him she's in ecstasy almost. And even King Lear is so naive that he buys it, and he says, I'm going to go give you no less in space, validity and pleasure, and the vines of France and milk of Burgundy strive to be interested. Sorry, that's the wrong bit. He's just saying that she's getting the same amount. And then we move on to Cordelia, who is completely different, who's saying that she's been thinking to herself in between each of her sisters speaking, and she's saying, well, what will I say? What will I say? How can I express my love? My love means more than what they're saying. And she says, my love's more richer than my tongue. So she's hoping that her father will see that she doesn't need to say some things to prove how much she loves him. And this is really her downfall, because, as he says, to whose young love the vines of France and milk of Burgundy strive to be interested, is when King Lear is trying to sell off his most prized daughter, and he says, how much do you love me? And says, a third more opulent than your sister. So he's bringing in the competition again, so you're going to get something better than your sisters, go on, fight for it. And she says, nothing, my lord. And then he says, King Lear repeats nothing, and Cordelia repeats nothing, and then he says, nothing will come of nothing, speak again. And this is really repetition going on again, and it's emphasizing the fact that she doesn't love him for something unnatural. She loves him from her actions, and she's not going to lie to him. So she's becoming more honest than her sisters and showing more love, because she's not lying to her father. But her father takes this the wrong way, and he flies into a rage and banishes her. And what he'd said earlier about the vines of France and the milk of Burgundy strive to be interested, after he banishes her, he removes her dowry, and he says he will not give her blessing. And then when France and Burgundy come to ask for marriage, and he tells them this, Burgundy pulls out. But France seems to be impressed by her attitude, and he decides to take her anyway without any dowry or any blessing. And this is really concluding the extract, saying that there are two daughters that don't really love him and that are prepared to lie to him, and there's one daughter that really does love him and isn't prepared to lie to him. But then the king is so naive that he believes that the ones that say things are speaking the truth, and the one that says nothing is just doesn't love him, or not enough to earn any of his kingdom. And it shows that the relationship is quite poor, because he doesn't understand his daughters, and he doesn't really understand what love is in general. When we look at literary features, we can see that we have Cordelia intervening in between each conversation between the daughter and Lear, and it's always in an aside, and it's always a question, so she's she's asking rhetorical questions, and then she's also saying, she's listening to what her sisters are saying and saying, well, this is wrong, so that the reader is like siding with her. And then we move on to the part where he says nothing, 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 nothing. So it's really repetition, and it's embedding this firm ground that Cordelia is standing, saying that, no, I'm not going to lie to you, whereas her sisters are very happy to just lie to get what they want, and they suck up to their father, while Cordelia is saying, no, I want to be different. He also uses punctuation in the way that the daughters speak, and it shows it so rehearsed, because you have a semicolon at the end of each line from Goneril, and then you have a full stop at the last one, obviously, but the same is made in Regan's side, and it's always like a script almost. They're reading, taking a pause, and then saying the next thing. Literally, almost playing music. It's like almost rhythmic, the way that they're saying it. And it's an unnatural way that you'd say it. You couldn't say it that perfectly, or just off the top of your head. So it's obviously faked. And that is my oral commentary. Thank you very much.